Hi everyone, this is Lokesh Baba from the Soul Freedom Show and Radical Purpose Coaching. My website is radicalpurposecoaching.com. Thanks everyone for joining. We have a very special guest today, Mr. Alandra Markman. Hi Alandra, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining from all the way from America, Mount Shasta area, right? Yeah,
Yep.
been
No,
to Mount Shasta. It's beautiful. Yeah, it's the land of Saint Germain. Some people say Saint Germain is still around there. You
yes,
actually look like Saint Germain a little bit, like your beard and stuff.
I get that a lot.
Yeah, yeah, without the glasses. But maybe he also wears glasses now. Yeah, now you're like a clone. They cloned Saint Germain. Oh, all right. Thank you so much. And then you have you're a spiritual healer, you're a deprogrammer, and you also do some other work. So why don't you share a little bit about your work and your services and also a little bit about your background?
Sure. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Primarily, I do coaching work with people to clear trauma, raise inner awareness, get people closer to spirit and higher self. So that's the main thing. Um, and I happen to be a survivor of trauma-based mind control, including satanic ritual abuse and the secret space programs and some other things that don't have popular terms yet. So I do attract a lot of other survivors, and I help them clear some of that very complex trauma and integrate their alters. Um, so I work with dissociative identity disorder also, um, and yeah, help to integrate things. And then I'm also a poet and a musician, so those are things that really make me happy and that I also do professionally. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And are you from California or were you born? Where were you born?
I grew up in New York City. Yeah. Mhm.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about your life, like the big moments in your life, all the shifts that happened in your life, including the trauma and all that stuff?
Okay, sure. Uh, I should start by saying that I have had experiences along many timelines. I've been moved to a different body and I've been age regressed several times. So my personal frame of reference is very unique because my consciousness of this individual person starts before this body was born, and it extends a long way past the present moment into the future along many other timelines. So this is a bit different from normal past life recall, which a lot of people have, and I have to a large extent. This is an artificial situation created by negative extraterrestrials. So, primarily the Draco reptilians and the Zeta Reticulan Greys, along with some aspects of the government, particularly US Air Force intelligence and CIA. So, I know that's a mouthful. um, But basically, I have a very complex reference point, or just personal experience, which includes a lot of diverse experiences. It's not just one lifetime, it's many lifetimes rolled into one.
Mm.
Um, yeah. So I was initially born in the 70s, and I grew up in Long Island to the east of New York City. And I went through what most people call the Montauk Project, which is, yeah, Project Rainbow Bridge, or Project Phoenix. There are different names for it. And when I was in my 20s, I was moved into a different body, this body. So this is not death and reincarnation, it's direct consciousness transfer from that body to this body. So then this person, the current body, was born in the 80s and was born into a multi-generational satanic family. So my family have been practitioners of Satanism going back quite a ways. And it's all tied together because basically all these different experiences were under the control mostly of the negative ETs.
Mm.
So, in the 80s, was moved into this body, grew up in New York City, Lower East Side, Manhattan, which was a very countercultural sort of area with a lot of cool stuff happening. And I lived in my mother's apartment, and she was a slave to her own handlers. So she was under mind control. I was under mind control. And I was used for a lot of different purposes, most of them very dark. So I grew up exposed to a tremendous amount of violence in different ways. And obviously that shaped my perspective a lot.
Mm,
So from birth, from certainly from the time of this birth and even from the time of my original birth in the 70s, I was subjected to very structured trauma. So this is the sort of trauma which is intended to create alters, to create personality splits. And so I had personality splits, many different sub-personalities who would be assigned different tasks, usually having to do with extreme violence. Um, so it's kind of the short, the short version, insofar as there is a short version. Um, so that was really my life up from this birth up until around 16. And at that time, I was able to get free from the cult and the military factions and start my own life. And so I've been free for about 20 years now. And since that time, since I got free, everything has been about healing, healing and creativity. Those are the two things that really get me excited. So
mm,
it's the short version. And then in my free life,
mm,
yeah, I went through high school and college, and I went through seminary in a Zen Buddhist context. So I was trained in Rinzai Zen, Japanese Zen Buddhist school. That's where I kind of started learning to meditate. So I was ordained in that tradition. And then after that, I had a few other teachers, more New Age kind of teachers. So I went through a bunch of training for over 10 years with different spiritual teachers, trying to find my own ground. And then I also went through therapy at a magical place called the Crime Victims Treatment Center in New York City.
mm,
That was, yeah, 2013 to 2015. So I had a lot of spiritual training in different schools, and I went through this intensive trauma therapy program, all to free myself, just to work through some of the violence that I had been accustomed to and adjust to a more peaceful life oriented around creativity and get resensitized, get more in my body because I was really out of my body. So most of my free time was dedicated to that. And I started helping others with these kinds of things around 2017 or so, 2016, 17. That's about when I went public, also started doing YouTube interviews about the trauma based mind control experience. And that turned out to be really great. It exposed me to a community of other survivors and helped me understand a lot more about my own experience, hearing other people's experiences, getting into the community. And the
mm.
community is pretty big at this point. At least it's bigger than it's ever been. It's not in mainstream awareness, but it's pretty big.
By community, you mean the people who have been affected by it or the people who know about it?
It's both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, uh, how would you, if you were to put a number on it, the people who have been affected, I mean, you won't know the exact number, but like roughly out of the, because I was listening to Misha, her name is, right? Misha Johnston. And I
Yeah.
think you only mentioned about her. And then I think you also mentioned about 20 to 30, she mentioned, or you, I forgot, but 20 to 30% of the people in the world are affected by some kind of mind control programs. Is that correct? Or
I think that's accurate. If you're including all the people indirectly impacted, it's probably higher. If you're talking only about the people who come from multi-generational, satanic families, it's smaller. That's probably maybe 3 or 4% of the population. But the people actually impacted by a wide variety of mind control programs, the people used and abused on different timelines in their dream time in astral space,
Hmm.
that gets up. That's probably Misha's referring to all of that taken together, which easily would be, yeah, 30%, 40%, something like that.
Yeah, because in a way everybody is right, but how would we differentiate between people who are, I think the one way to differentiate is people who are deliberately targeted. Those would be like some people call star seeds, and people who have psychic powers. So that would probably be 5% maybe in the word.
Somewhere around there. Yeah, if you're talking just about satanic families, it's probably lower. If you're including all the different programs where individual star seeds are targeted, it's probably higher. Yeah.
So do you believe that the whole theory around star seeds, as in people, I mean, there's two theories that I at least follow. One is the star seed, the other is the chosen ones. I think chosen ones is more like religious, the
Hmm.
144K, but star seeds is more like souls who came here to kind of elevate humanity or be in this time where the humanity is going through the elevation, or some people call ascension, but that term has been abused a lot. So, the whole 3D to 5D thing. Well, there's so many areas we can go into, but I would say let's start with the star seeds. So, do you think star seeds would be people who are kind of hybrids, as in they came from somewhere else, kind of a thing, or?
Physical hybrids may or may not be star seeds. There are a lot of humans who have their DNA altered intentionally, like for the light or for the darkness.
But those
So
won't be star seeds, right? The darkness ones would be called something else.
perhaps, I mean, good and evil is very relative, and a lot of very evil beings are also star seeds.
Oh,
So
okay, okay. So that's where you would get into light worker versus non-light worker kind of a thing.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, those are just words that we use. Like just like the word 5D doesn't really mean there's a 5D there where we're going. It's the same way. Some words we can only use to describe something, but it's not the actual thing.
Yeah.
And then do you believe in the chosen ones, the 144Ks, or is it all just a religious mumbo jumbo?
I think there's some truth to it.
But the
In,
numbers may not be right. Yeah.
in terms of seriously dedicated light workers, that's a fewer number than star seeds, obviously, as I'm defining it. So I think it's reasonable to posit a smaller number. There are millions and millions of star seeds, but in terms of people like really raising the consciousness of Earth in an active, committed way, it's going to be less than that.
Mhm.
144,000 seems too low to me. It's probably more than that.
Yeah. I
But
mean, yeah,
but
go ahead.
but but I think I might not agree on the specific number, but I think the general sentiment has its resonance, has a truthful resonance. Yeah.
Do you also believe, because some people say the whole 8 billion people on this planet is not really, it's much less than that. I don't know, it's a conspiracy but do you believe that there's not as many people in this world, or it doesn't really matter at this point?
Um, well, I think the population statistics are mostly accurate. However, not every person in a body is actually human at this time. We do have a lot of holograms. We have a lot of AI people walking around. We have a lot of illusions. So, not every person that appears to be a human is one. Yeah.
Is that what they call NPCs or soulless people? Is that the same?
Yeah. Hmm.
All right. But I mean, that's one way to look at it. The other way I like to look at it as in everything has a soul, even if it's the devil or Satan or
Hmm.
murderer, they still have souls. That I mean,
Hmm.
that's just two perspectives, right?
Yeah. Everything is God or goddess. There's nothing
Yeah,
which, yeah, not
right.
God.
Even this laptop that we are talking through, that also has a soul, because otherwise, in a way, it's doing a positive thing. And even what they call AI, it also has a soul.
Hmm.
So I think again, those are just like different perspectives. That's why I think the whole quantum multidimensional theory is getting so popular, because now people have started understanding that there's not just one way to look at things. Like we can look at the same thing in so many different ways.
Hmm.
And it can get overwhelming sometimes, at least for me. And that's where we need to ground ourselves, and the healing work that you do and the therapy, like you said. So there's so many ways also, especially through the internet that we're talking through. It's made it so simple, so much easier. And so in terms of like going back to the My Lab and things, like, is that still going on, those programs, or some of them have been dismantled?
No, it's still going on. Yeah.
So even though there's so much exposure and like people knowing about it, so that means doesn't really make any difference to the collective consciousness or the agencies who are doing these programs. It, like, why do these things keep happening even if there's more awareness around it?
A lot of it happens in plain sight. There's a lot of what in the survivor community we call soft disclosure. So different fictional shows that show real things that are actually happening. Your Black Mirror kind of sci-fi shows, especially,
Mm.
that's showing the mind control process as it's actually happening, and people are seeing it as fiction. People for the most part, unfortunately, still believe what they're told to believe by primarily media sources, which are run by the negative forces. So it's going on, and it's more widespread than it's ever been. However, the technology is more sophisticated, it damages people less. For my generation and the generation or two generations before mine, people like Misha, um, a lot of physical harm was caused to them, and the programming was extremely traumatic. The programming is still going on now to an even greater extent, but it's less physically traumatic because the mind control has been refined to such a point where they don't have to damage people as much. So the people are coming out of the programs or even still in the programs without any awareness of it, without any trauma that they have identified. It goes completely unnoticed, even by the person experiencing it.
So it's a matter of critical thinking. People still haven't reached a point where they can think through the whole situation. Like in a movie, like we go to see a movie, but we think it's real. But it's almost like magic. It's like, we or like hypnosis, like people get hypnotized into thinking that whatever they're seeing is actually true.
Yeah. Well, critical thinking, in some ways, it's breaking down, and in some ways, it's becoming more embodied because people are realizing
Mhm.
that a lot of our thought systems are based in nonsense. So
Yeah.
we have to go back to source, back to the body, back to intuition to create more meaningful systems of thinking, including critical thought. When we say critical thinking, it's so often associated with just bullying and debunking, like just throwing out anything spiritual, and having this like extreme materialist worldview. That's often what we associate with the term critical thinking.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's breaking down, which is a positive thing. Everybody and their brother is into tarot now, and it's, witchy
Yeah.
things
But at
are,
the same time, like people, like for example, flat earthers, those kind of people are also growing at the same time. So it's kind of like, you know,
it's, yeah, it's problematic because a lot of people are going through such a crisis of faith and a crisis of knowledge that they can't believe anything, they can't trust anything. They'll go for whatever insane thing shows up on their Twitter feed.
yeah. So it's both the things happening at the same time. The light is growing as well as the dark, and that's the whole polarity game that we are playing. And
Yeah.
that's what God or whoever created, whatever you want to call it, like if you call it God, he, she, it wants to go through the drama. What in India they call Leela is like a divine play of light and dark. But that doesn't mean good or bad, or, It's like from God's perspective, there's no such thing as good or bad. Even if somebody's killing somebody else, at the end of the day, it's like the nature is wants to keep expanding, even if it's through killing somebody or something.
Yeah, there's some truth to that. I also believe in good and evil, so I think they're real things.
Yeah, what they call dharma. So there's a difference between karma and dharma in Indian philosophy. So karma is what we do, and then there's cause and effect because of karma. But dharma is the values that we have and live through those values, which leads to our karma, right?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is you don't you do believe in good and bad. So what would be, so you mean to say, like, for example, if somebody is torturing somebody or harming somebody intentionally, that would be considered bad from your perspective?
Yeah, I don't think I should have to argue that one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I agree to that, but if you look at it from a God, like if I'm God, let's say I want to create a universe, right? And I say I want the polarity between light and dark. So the only way I could do that is I won't say good and bad, but there has to be some killing involved, or there has to be some kind of a destruction involved, like what in India there's Shiva, right? The Shiva is the god of destruction.
Mm,
So and the Vishnu is the maintainer, and then Brahma is the creator. So there's all three happening at the same time.
mm.
But just because Shiva is destroying, that doesn't make him a bad god. Like he's doing his job, right?
Yeah.
Whoever created Shiva, right? That he's not judging Shiva, like, So I think the higher we go, it's like a pyramid, right? The higher in dimension we go, at least that's my perspective. The distinction between good and bad just keeps going down and down, right?
Mm.
And and another way to look at it, the way I look at it is like when we dream at night. Like let's say I go to sleep, a dream, and there's one character that's killing another character in my dream. But when I wake up, there was no killing. There was nobody killing anybody.
Yeah. It's a well, as Ken Wilber says, it's a transcend and include kind of thing. I like his term for that. So we transcend morality, but we also include morality. It's not like we reject it. Like
Oh
we
yeah. Yeah, in our daily lives, like yeah, just like manners and courtesy and cleanliness and all those things we have to do to maintain a good life. So in that sense, yeah, there's a good and bad,
Mhm.
right? Cool. All right. Yeah, that makes sense. Who was the name you mentioned? Who said that?
Wilber.
Oh, Ken Wilber,
Yeah.
the guy who made, what's his company's name? The one that's run schools and stuff like that. He had
Uh, I don't know if he made a company. He wrote Sex Ecology, Spirituality.
no, I
Uh,
mean by company, I mean they have these schools for kids where they teach like not the normal education. They have a Walb. Is that a Wilb
oh,
Walber?
you might be thinking of Rudolf Steiner.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking. Oh yeah, I'm thinking Rudolf Steiner. You're talking about Ken Wilber. Okay, okay, yeah, that's two
Mhm.
different people.
Yeah. Yeah, Steiner was early 20th century, and Ken Wilber's still alive, I believe.
Still alive. Yeah, I saw his like. Yeah, he's probably in the 90s, but I think he's still talking. Like he's still doing the interviews and stuff. I saw one couple of weeks back. Yeah. So, how did you get out of, like you said you did some therapy and stuff, but who's the one who guided you? Like once you knew you're in a mess, was it like how did you get out of that situation? If you can share a little bit.
I was aware that I was in a mess from a very young age, and my spirit guides made contact with me as soon as my conscious mind allowed for it. So let's say that's around 3 or 4 years old that you start having, meaningful self-awareness and you start retaining memory and stuff like that. So, and from that time, and most likely from before that, I've had my spirit guides with me. And they've been the ones who helped me navigate all the insanity and, keep my core self alive. The primary guides that I usually reference are the Ontarians. This is why I call my business Ontarian Journeys. So these are eighth dimensional beings from the Scorpio constellation. And they show up in different ways in my awareness. Typically, they'll show up as a dog headed person, like an Anubis figure,
Mm.
human body, dog head. That's been the most typical form. They're both physical and non physical. They're able to materialize into this reality, but mostly they don't. Mostly I see them in visions. But they're the ones that are the most directly responsible for me being alive right now. They saved my life on many occasions and helped me navigate all the torture situations that I went through and helped me get free when the time came. A lot of these things are divinely ordained, so there's a certain timing and a certain logic behind all different events, which you're sort of obliquely referencing. And I found that to be true. Like there was a certain time when my freedom just came, essentially, and it was allowed to happen. And it's orchestrated on so many levels beyond this one. It's honestly quite beyond my comprehension. But I can say that the Ontarians were very helpful. The positive Zeta Reticulans were very helpful. Those are the grays. And also, there are positive Draco who are very helpful. So, not all of the Draco are evil. Some of them are in a resistance movement, and they helped me tremendously, also saved my life. So, I basically owe my life and my freedom to them. I mean, owing is a a term that's a little bit overly simplistic, but yeah,
Right.
they're the ones who helped me through it.
How did you know that they are the Antorians? Because unless you've studied them before, how would you know that they are from the Scorpio constellation?
They told me, and I
Well,
researched it later. As a free person, I researched it later.
then how
Antares,
would you how did you trust them in the to begin with? Like how how did you know that you're not hallucinating or something? Or how did you know that they're not like just playing games with you, you know?
pretty early on, I decided that hallucination or not, if it was helping me to stay sane, then I was going to follow it. That was just survival. So I can't say exactly which times I was hallucinating and which times I was actually experiencing a physical visitation. It was not always clear. I spent a lot of my childhood and adolescence on heavy drugs, and my perception was extremely warped by drugs, by extreme trauma, by the stress of the situation. So I'm sure there were many times when I was straight out hallucinating. And I decided if this is helpful, I'm using it. I'm taking any help that I can get to get through this. So there were times when the visions were helpful. There were times when I'm pretty sure it was a physical presence helping me. And also, I decided they had a loving presence, and it's something you can't fake. It's something you just feel in your whole body. When you're in the presence of a being which is completely loving, you don't have to vet the person. It just is trust on a primal level. Your body knows when to trust on an instinctual level, no matter how much trauma you've had. It can be harder when you've had more trauma, of course. But
Yeah, because the trust, because you don't trust easily, right?
yeah, but I know from experience, there are types of trust that go beyond the body. They go beyond any conventional ability to trust. There's just an animal knowledge when you're in the presence of a being completely loving, like a Buddha,
Right.
your body responds in and it just tells you that this is happening. There's something just totally animal about it, which I trust. So that kind
Right.
of
But
yeah.
there's always, isn't there, at least for me, because that's what you call betrayal, right? Like if you look not from your perspective, not I'm just saying in general, because I've been through those situations as well. Not not like the beings you're talking about. I'm talking about like human to human interaction, right? Like you meet somebody, you whether it's for business or romance, like we start trusting everything. This is the oh the best person I've ever met, and this is the best business partner. But
Mhm.
then later we find out either that person has changed, or you've changed, or they were hiding something, or there was a compatibility issue, or there was something comes up, right? So those
Yes.
kind of situations can never be avoided, right?
Not with other human beings, but with higher beings like the Ontarians, yes, they can be avoided.
How would you, how can you be so sure?
As I say, it's an instinctual thing. There are very, very few humans, almost none, who can actually embody that kind of love. It's something that you almost never encounter in other human beings. But for the higher beings, it's much more common. It's a totally different feeling than meeting another person and you have to, maybe you're attracted to them or they have a enticing offer for you and you have to decide if they're sincere or not, like go through that process. That's a normal process with other human beings. With the higher beings, it's possible for them to be radiating a presence which is so in integrity that there's absolutely no process of building trust needed. You just feel the energy. And very few of us have had this experience. So, I'm asking our listeners to go on faith a little bit if they have not had the experience. But it's a real thing.
At the same, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I haven't gone through those experiences, so I cannot say for sure, but I kind of resonate with what you're saying. But at the same time, I also feel there's that level of what they call discretion, right? What do you call it? Discretion, or there's another word for it, to know the discernment. Yeah, discernment, that we still need at all times. At least that's my perspective, right? Like, even if somebody says I'm Jesus Christ, or I'm Buddha, like, okay,
Mhm.
he's really good to me, he's helping me out, but even then, a little part of me, my mind will still be like, what if, I mean, I don't know, I'm just taking the worst case scenario, right? Because
Sure.
especially with AI and all these things, like the clones of all these presidents and all these things, and what's going on in the world. Like, I know what you're saying is that there's a difference between human to human trust, and then you're talking about human to non-human, or non. But then, even if they're non-human, that doesn't mean, that doesn't make them like angelic, or doesn't make them trustworthy just because you feel good about them, right?
Yeah, categorically, I agree with you. Absolutely. If there's any doubt whatsoever, allow the doubt and let it inform you. In the true presence of unconditional love in an embodied way, that doubt is simply, it's just integrated into the experience. It's not
Yeah,
like yeah,
not
you
stopping,
transcend
it's just
duality.
teaching something. Yeah, just to know what is it teaching me, instead of keep doubting, it's asking what's teaching me.
Yeah, I think you're still kind of speaking on a human to human level ish, which is fine. Um, yeah, like what is the teaching is always a good question to ask, regardless of the situation or how
Yeah.
good or evil the person is. Yeah. So
So
I'm
what
with
else would you, if it was like, let's say tomorrow or tonight, there's some non-human entity comes, starts talking to me, what are the some things that I should keep in mind? So you're saying, like, what would I be, like, thinking, what should I be, what are some things I should have in mind while talking to them?
how do I feel is an important one. Even if they're a very convincing liar, a very smooth talker, if they're telepathically projecting images of bliss to you, even within that, there's a part of you that can sense through any deception. The part of you which is really grounded in the bottom of the heart and has direct access to intuition is always aware that there's a deception if there is one. So I always advise people to try to get to know that part of themselves as much as possible using whatever practices get them there, because that's true discernment. It's a feeling. It's pretty much a gut feeling as I experience it. Yeah.
So you said you get them, you communicate with them in your visions. So can you describe a little bit? Is it like a meditation state? Is it hypnosis? Is it astral projection? What is it that you go through?
Yeah. All of the above. We don't have mental categories yet for some of the things that happen there. We're just really beginning our exploration of our psychic gifts, our remembrance of our psychic gifts. We're at the very, very beginning of that process. So all of our terms are very crude. And I advise a lot of patience and compassion in this process. And people don't even know what they're talking about most of the time. Even people who talk in what seems like an expert way about astral projection, for instance, they might not even be talking about the same thing as another expert talking about astral projection. So these things are highly subjective, and I want to give honor to that because, yeah, it's worth saying before I even try to
Yeah.
differentiate things. Um, so, um, a lot of what I experience is mind to mind, so and heart to heart. And what I'll get mostly is a sense of presence, like I'm in the presence of something. I might not know what it is, but I feel it in my body. And when it's a loving connection, it's a heart to heart connection, and a lot of information is transferred instantaneously, without any need for a conventional conversation. So sometimes that's in the form of holographic images, mind to mind, sort of telepathic communication. I really favor heart to heart communication because for me it's the most complete. So, and in terms of higher senses, people talk about the clairs. So I'm mostly clairsentient and claircognizant. That means that I get higher information through my body sensations and through ideas that just enter my head out of nowhere. So those are my most active senses. Most of the conversation around psychic gifts tends to center on clairvoyance, which is when your inner sight is your strongest conduit for higher information. But any of the six senses have their clair version. Um, so for me, yeah, so I'm very tactile, and then I'll just get inspiration for things to share, things to create that may or may not be from me. There's a creative collaboration between me and my guides. So a broad label that often works for this kind of communication is inspiration. That's a very broad category, and it covers most of what I experience. So I can call it inspiration,
Okay.
divine inspiration. Yeah,
So do you have eyes open or eyes closed or like both?
both. Depends on the situation. Lately in meditation, I've had my eyes closed mostly. When I'm working on a client, often I'll have my eyes closed as well. It does help me focus a bit on my sensations and my claircognizance. But you never know because this reality that we live in, our physical sense of sight, also holds so much higher information. You can learn so much and you can intuit so much just by looking, gazing is such a deep practice. So, so I do like that. I like to also get information through all my senses, through my normal senses, through my sense of sight. Yeah, I love to just look in someone's eyes and it tells you so much about where they're at. We all know that. So I like to include everything.
And does it work online as well? Like, is it how much of it is distorted through online?
It works online for me. I've had enough practice where there's very little difference between in person and online now. Yeah,
And so it's the eyes and also the facial expressions, right? Or just the eyes?
it's a lot of things. Most of our communication is through body language. Even mainstream people know that at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah. The eyes, I mean, eyes would be probably 80% or so, right?
Oh, I don't know about the specific percentage of eyes. Uh,
I mean, for you specifically, how much of a person do you read through the eyes?
oh, well, it's something very personal, so I
Oh, it
don't,
depends. Okay, okay.
yeah,
Depends. Yeah,
I
many
don't,
persons. Yeah.
yeah, I don't go there with everybody. Yeah.
So is it like a spontaneous, like for example, if you wanted to do it right now, talk to those beings, would you be able to do it? Or is it like you have to go into a certain state of mind?
Yeah, I could do it.
Can we try, or is it not a good time for that?
We can try. We'll see what we get. Again, I'm very blended with my guides, and what I get is in the form of inspiration. So um, often I don't differentiate much where they end and I begin. So I just want to say that because it's not always a pure transmission from them. It's a collaboration between them and me. But yeah, but with that said, I'm very open.
All right. So let's say what's happening in the world, like especially in, the whole Trump Musk thing that's going, there's so many things going on in the world. So if you were to ask your guides about not just the political situation, because there's many layers to what's going on in the US political uh, reference, right? Like the framework. If you were to ask your guides about that, like that's my thing, is like there's many layers to it. Or if anything else that comes up, like what do you think in this moment your guides want to share with this audience right now?
Hmm,
Yeah, for the highest good of everybody in this world.
sure. Politics is a circus designed to keep people distracted for the most part. I don't need psychic skills to be able to say that. There is a movement towards authoritarianism globally, and it's not organic. It's something that's engineered by the people that control society, and especially by the negative ET groups that control the humans. So they're trying to get us to fight each other because this is the dawn of our enlightenment. And if we're not fighting each other, we're ascending. Like it's
Yeah.
at the point it's at the point where if our attention is not aggressively dragged down, it's rising. It's always rising. Everybody's vibration is raising. Like this is inevitable. This is part of how the earth is going. So there's maximum effort to get us into low vibrations, hatred and fear and shame, and all the things that increase our self consciousness and reduce our God awareness. Everything is being thrown at us at this point. So there is a coherent movement to push all the surface governments of the world towards fascism and towards more direct repression of the population, because without that people are just whoosh, they're ascending. So they want to put them into fear and struggle and, make it harder.
So, do you think that this planet is going to split? Like Dolores Cannon started talking about it, but now there's a lot of people saying that there's going to be people who have not going to make it to whatever they call it 5D, but doesn't really matter. But do you think there's going to be like a split of consciousness amongst the human beings, or do you think that it's going to be like 100 monkey effect where, let's say 51% or even less than that make it to the next level, then everybody else just free pass for them?
It's both for me. Yeah, I think it's
How
both.
can it be both? Either everybody ascends or there's a split.
Well, whatever we experience is going to be from our own perspective. Our own perspective is not going to include everything that's happening for everybody, not just in the conventional sense, but in the sense of a timeline split. Like there are radically different realities that we are going to experience. And so, in that sense, I resonate with Dolores Cannon. I love her convoluted universe books, by the way. Um, and I feel like there is a potential for completely different timelines experienced by different segments of the population. Like, I think that's real.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
yeah. And at the same time, I think each of us will also experience the hundredth monkey thing, as you put it, and that mass awakening is also a definite possibility where everybody is along for the ride. But of course, whatever you experience as everybody may or may not be the entire
The
population of
person, yeah,
Earth on
yeah.
all timelines. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just like when we dream at night, that doesn't mean we are sharing the dream with everybody else. Like it's the same concept.
Mhm.
Um, in terms of healing work that you do you want to share what are the different modalities you use and how you help people? Like,
Sure. Well, my primary thing is to get people closer to spirit, closer to higher self, and the fullest expression of what they are. So that obviously applies to everybody, regardless of experience. So I have clients all over the spectrum. Some have very little trauma, some have a lot of trauma, like me, and I'll see anybody in any situation to help them get closer to spirit. That said, I do see a lot of people who are survivors of mind control, whether in this body or other bodies, people who are actively targeted. I help people to get free. I help people to remake their reality, to manifest their freedom, to raise their vibration to where they're no longer targeted. So that's something that people seek me out for. I try to keep an open mind and an open space because people approach me in many different situations, and very often I'm surprised. I don't have a particular type of ideal client. I really stay radically open, and different things present themselves. I had one client who was very interested in helping me manifest a positive implant in his mind. So often when we think of that's a whole subject, but when we think of things like etheric implants, often we think of them as negative. But this particular client had what he felt was a very positive one coming in, and he wanted to help me. He wanted me to help him hold the space so that implant could come in more fully. So I might be removing implants, I might be helping implants be put in.
uh,
Whatever serves the highest good. Yeah.
so there's one thing is about we were talking about astral projection earlier. Like, what like what do you think is the difference between dreaming, like as in like if I go to sleep right now I'm dreaming, but if I'm meditating and I go astral project and go to moon and experience something, come back, what is the difference between, I don't know if I'm making myself clear, because to me sounds like lucid dreaming and remote viewing and astral projection, they sound like the same thing to me.
Yeah, they're all closely related. Yeah.
And what you do, what you were saying in your vision, like how would that differ from astral projection?
Generally, astral projection is the full separation of your astral body from your physical body. So that means you have the experience of leaving your body with your consciousness and going somewhere else. Not everybody uses the term that way. Again, there's a lot of ambiguity because these are highly subjective things. But as I experience it, that's specifically when your astral body is leaving the physical body and going somewhere else. That's astral travel.
Mhm.
It happens in dreaming organically to some extent. Everyone has a different relationship between their physical body and their dream body. Some people have dreams where they're basically in the exact same situation that they are in waking life. And then other people, or just the same people at other times, have dreams where they're having a totally separate experience, a totally separate perspective. They're a different person. And I wouldn't call that astral projection as much as it is just tuning into the soul matrix. We're all having a lot of parallel experiences at the same time, whether we're aware of it or not. We all have the capacity to bilocate or trilocate, to be in many places at once. Each of our souls, and this is something that I've learned as an interbeing, each of our souls has many missions at the same time and may function as many different beings at the same time. So if we slip into the perspective of one of our alternate selves, um, that might not be us projecting from our body astrally. It might just be tuning into the soul grid and having another experience that your
Yeah.
soul is having. Yeah,
It's similar to the concept of past life. Like if I experience a past life, that may not be my past life. I might be tapping into somebody else's, right?
this is true. And going back to Dolores Cannon, I love her idea that some of us have generic past life memories that are just there to like orient us to the Earth experience. And that's her explanation for why, 1,000 different people remember being Cleopatra because they have like basically a hologram in order to
Yeah.
orient them to the Earth experience. Yeah.
And then there's the concept of the oversoul, which Bashar talks about and other people, where we
Mhm.
have our own, but we are also in a group. So we are tapping into the group of the souls, like it could be 1,000, 2,000. And
Indeed.
those are the people we keep getting into meeting in almost every other life, right? In different
Indeed. Yes.
relationships, right? So until we learn a lesson, it's like comes back, at least to me, comes back to um learning my lesson, not just from that person but also in that situation. Like addiction is a good example, right? Like I used to be addicted to alcohol, like whiskey, for a long time. So, and I wasn't sure why I'm doing it, like when but then I started questioning, like, why am I drinking? Because it wasn't really helping me in any way. It Then I was like, okay, maybe it's generational, or maybe I'm lonely, or maybe I'm depressed, but then I started asking why. And then I
Mhm.
started asking, how is it helping me? Because at one point, after 3 4 years of drinking every day, I was at a point where it wasn't even making me happy. I was just drinking like water or
Mhm.
coffee. And then it took me that what we call critical thinking, right? Or multidimensional thinking, is like, is it really helping me? And then my body had to adjust. My mind had adjusted, but then my body had to adjust, right? That's where the emotions come in through the body as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Most addiction is a desire for reparenting.
Like what Freud talk about.
Uh, I mean, I wouldn't credit Freud with that specifically, but for in my experience, most addiction is the desire to really feel held and numb out and just be rocked, in a womb, in a cradle, in a set of loving arms. That's the root of almost all addiction that I've experienced.
Have you been addicted to anything in your life?
A few things, yeah. Well, growing up, I had some really serious chemical dependencies that were forced on me by my handlers. So that was a whole process. At least five or six separate substances that I was heavily addicted to at different points. So that was part of my experience. As an adult, as a free person, computer games have been the big one. So spending way too much time on computer games. Um, and that's a fine line because that is one of my hobby activities. It's something that I do enjoy a lot. And it's something that I've also used addictively quite a lot. So I have to watch it. Um, yeah, but that's one example. Um, but growing up, yeah,
Yeah.
many layers of addiction. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Since you mentioned handlers, so I want to understand that because I've heard a lot of people talk about it. So those handlers are, because there's two things, right? One is the soul contracts. We have contracts with people before we come into a life, like to abuse us or to do whatever, so that we can learn a lesson or whatever. I mean, that's just one school of thought, right? The other one is like you were saying, you were born into a family which was going through that already, so that's maybe a genetic makeup or whatever. And
Mhm.
the third is probably like the abductions that happen, like they randomly pick up people for trauma or abduction. So those are the three main categories. Is that right? Or
Oh, you can create as many categories as you want.
so let's talk about you for your hand. Like, first of all, at what point did you know that you were being targeted or handled? Like, how did you decide that?
In my case, it was disturbingly obvious from the very beginning of my life. I never had an experience in my first 16 years of this body's life that was actually organic. Essentially, everything was engineered. Almost everything I experienced was part of a very dense web of
How
lies.
would you know, like, if you were born in that situation, how would you know that this is not normal?
It happens at a different time for each person. For me, my adoptive father was very instrumental. So my mother at one point took a husband who was not part of the cult, and he was not aware of the abuse. He didn't live with us, and he was very in love with my mother, and he loved me a lot. And he was extremely instrumental because he was a safe parent figure that showed up at a very critical time when I was about 3 or 4 in this body. So I had a father figure who was actually safe, which is a very rare thing for somebody coming from a satanic family. Having a safe adult of any kind, much less an actual parent figure, is very rare. So for me, that planted a seed. I was like, oh, not everybody is part of this. Like, some people are not part of this. There are other ways to be. Like, he showed me that there was another way to be. And that was incredibly impactful. Yeah. But a lot of us who come from satanic families never meet a safe adult until we're an adult. So it can be challenging.
Yeah. So is your family also out of this? Like the
They're
rest of
passed away.
passed
Yeah.
away? Like, was it part of the, I mean, before they passed away, did they deprogram themselves?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Deprogramming is a very hard thing to do, which is something that I know because I was trained to be a programmer. That's part of my passion. Yeah, that's part of my passion for coaching now because I was used as a handler. I was a handler. I was a programmer.
For other
And
people?
yeah, for other people. Um,
And
so I,
you've deprogrammed them as well?
and yes, now I work as a deprogrammer, the direct opposite.
Do they know that you were programming them?
The people that I was programming, some did, some didn't.
So
Some,
was it like an assignment that was given to you to program other people? By
yes,
by who? By your handlers.
by my handlers,
And
yeah.
those handlers were working for like the three-letter agencies, or who were they working?
A lot of them were, yeah. One of my main handlers worked for the New York City Police Department, so there was some local agency involvement as well. And some of them were CIA, some of them were Air Force, some of them were private, representing private corporations. Some of them were representing off-world groups. Yeah, quite a variety.
So so I would assume that most people they program or they handle are still going through that, like probably 90% would be, and then maybe 1 out of 10 gets out of it, like through some either through like angelic, like you said about your parent, and somebody guides you, or it could be like a divine intervention kind of a thing, right? So would you say
It's
1 out of 10 are able to do it?
honestly, it's probably more like 1 in 1,000 than 1 in 10.
So does that include all those super soldier programs and SSP and all those programs, or is that a different category?
I'm speaking broadly to include all forms of trauma-based mind control. Yeah, includes all of that.
So you're saying it's on the rise based on before, let's say 20 years back, and now it's on the rise.
Absolutely. I think the general population is being exposed to a lot more mind control and psychotronic attack than it was 20 years ago. Yeah.
So how would I know? Let's say, let's say I'm going through this at night or whatever, astrally, like how would I know that I'm being programmed or handled?
I keep going back to that instinctual awareness, intuitive awareness that can feel through any deception, no matter how elaborate it is. That's really my greatest tool for these kinds of
Intuition.
things.
So would you say you're intuitively you can tell?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, because let's say I come to you like I'm a stranger, let's say we're talking like how would you know just by looking at their eyes or talking to them, or like, or is it depends from person to person is different?
Well, as a counselor, it's much more relevant that they become aware than it is
Then
that
they
I.
explain the situation, like they explain the situation to you, like Okay.
Yeah. I mean, as a helping professional, you want to work with people where they are, try to use their language, help them understand
Oh,
things
okay.
in their own terms, empowering people to come to their own conclusions. It may or may not be something that I personally encountered before. Often it is, but I like to leave that room for people to make their own interpretations. Um, and I think that's critical for getting free. I mean, if somebody else says, "Oh, you're part of this program," like it may or may not do anything to help a
Like, how
person.
would I know if I don't even know? Like most people, I would say 90% of the people, probably more, they don't even know what we're talking about, SSP, all these things. Nobody. So if they're getting programmed and they don't even know what's going on, then how would they they won't even come to you.
Yeah, probably they won't come to me. That's true.
Or I mean, they won't even try to deprogram themselves because they don't think they're programmed. Like just like we were talking about critical thinking, right? They don't have that in them, right?
That is, for me, that's one of the saddest aspects of mind control is that the vast majority of survivors will have no awareness of it for their entire life. Like
Unless
that
they
is,
start doubting, like that's where that, just like
yeah,
in the movie The Matrix, they said like he was started doubting, like is am I some kind of a prison or a matrix system? Which
yeah,
once you start doubting and then you start questioning and then you use the critical thinking that, oh, what if this person is deceiving me or whatever, right?
yeah.
Not
Well,
person, but it would be systems at that point, because just like the money system, political system, education system, they're not
yeah,
coming after you, but you're part of that system.
indeed. Yes, we're all part of those.
I mean, not you, but anybody who starts questioning, like at least that's how it happened to me, right? Like education doesn't make any sense. Like you go to school, learn some things, pass an exam. What the fuck? Like,
Yeah, it's true.
um,
Well, there are some just mainstream articles out there about this. Our educational system basically originated as a corporate slavery program. So,
yeah,
I mean,
even the word school, I think it means some kind of a working for somebody for something. I don't remember what.
I haven't looked into
Slave, I
that.
think ultimately somebody was talking about it. It's like being a slave for a government system. If you break down the word school, or not school, sorry, education, I think it was one of those two.
Oh, well, education means to lead out. That's the root of it, educere, to lead
Lead
out.
out.
Yeah. So you're leading someone out of something.
Oh, okay, okay. Then might be another. Maybe I'm confusing with another word. Maybe it's school or something else. But the
Yeah. I,
like
I'm
because
curious.
there's because some of these English words come out of like Latin, and there's different sources of these words, right?
Hmm.
And then they have some hidden meanings, and then there's geometria behind them. That means there's numbers behind the letters as well.
Yeah, everything has its sacred presence within it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Do you have any like the word God? Since we were talking about words, right? God and dog. Like many people, like, do you think that animal dog has something to do with the god? Because you were also talking about that some of those entities that you were communicating with, they had some kind of a, what kind of a head was that?
Yeah, a dog head, a jackal head. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think dogs have some of that divine godly energy, or is it just randomly, it's just god and dog or anagrams?
70% random, 30% divine meant to be.
Yeah, yeah. And it could have changed too, because that's how I feel, that maybe it started out that way, but then it changed over time. Just like we human beings were not meant to live like slaves when we, but we became, I mean, not we, but like, most human beings became slave to the system. Same way, the dog maybe could have been a reference to the divine energy that was coming through from God, but then it kind of distorted itself, right?
Well, as those who are into New Age culture know, our higher dimensional friends come in many forms. A lot of them are animal forms, many different kinds, some familiar, some unfamiliar. dogs and cats. Usually I'm saying I have dog being contacts. Lyra and starseeds often talk about cat-headed humans.
Yeah, the Egyptian ones, right?
Yeah, we've got dogs, cats, bugs. We've got everything under the sun, really. Everything is God. So,
Yeah, even the Chinese have that whole system. The calendar is based on animals, right?
mhm.
So do you think like every species, I mean, I'm sure like because I think everything has a purpose, not just animals, but birds,
Mhm.
plants, trees like this. That's why I'm like, why did God make things so complicated? It could have been just 10 species, 10 plant species, 10 human species, and 10 animal species. It could have been so much easier.
Mhm. Earth is one of the most biodiverse places in our galaxy. So, this level of biodiversity is very unique. Not every place is this complicated.
Yeah, but then what's the like ultimately what's the purpose? Like there's species we don't even know about that are under the ocean, but what is the purpose of them being there?
To hold a certain vibration, everything is vibration.
Yeah, yeah, that's the right answer.
Yes.
I know you passed the exam. No, no. You're a good student. No, no. uh yeah, I mean ultimately, yeah, even like sometimes I feel like the whole space, like they say dark matter, right? 99% or whatever, 95% of the space is dark matter, but that also has a purpose otherwise, because they won't be my I won't be there if there's no space.
It's true that our physical experience is the crest of a very large wave.
So do you think like what they call plasma now, because there's ether, there's air, there's prana, there's plasma, there's like so many, and then there's dark matter, and then there's another one. But there's so many names and categories to what I call space.
Hmm.
Do you have any, because a lot of people now started talking about plasma. Do you have any opinions or information about that?
Personally, I'm a fan of the ether element, the fifth element. I think Western magic was really impoverished by moving from five elements to four elements, earth, air, wind, earth, air,
Yeah, yeah,
fire, water.
yeah.
Um, I think leaving out the ether element really took so much of the oomph out of Western philosophy and Western magic. I would really like for that to be reintroduced personally.
For which
um,
one?
ether,
Ether.
yeah.
What? How would you define ether?
Well, I think ether is, I mean, this is metaphorical language, so forgive the inexactness. Um, but I think ether really references the vibrating strings of the universe, the undergirding material of physical matter. Um, it could we could talk about it as strings if we're using string theory. We could talk about it as dark matter. We could use so many different, bits of sort of sciencey language or metaphysical language to try to bring it into some expression. Um, but I think ether is, I don't know, I just enjoy the resonance of the word. And it covers a lot of things that science is now catching up with.
Is that plasma is like a similar concept, or do you think it's a different concept?
Um, I'm not a physicist, so this is armchair knowledge, but I mean, I understand plasma as a fourth state of matter. So we
Mhm.
have solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. Um, and yeah, I really don't know very much about it, but that's how I understand it. I did use a lot of plasma weapons when I was in service on Mars.
Mm,
Um, and these are devastating weapons that can cut through any kind of material, superheated plasma weapons. Um,
mhm.
so I don't know. Those are my reference points. I don't really have a metaphysical reference point
Okay,
for that.
okay. The
Yeah.
last thing before we wrap it up, I want to ask about gold, because especially because you're wearing a shirt that
Hmm.
reminds me of the gold color, and then because
Yep.
now
Hello.
Yeah, and the sun, yeah, sun and gold, and yeah, that's a very beautiful shirt,
Thanks.
t-shirt, yeah. So, okay, let's wrap this up, like because sun is connected to gold as well. So that shirt actually is a good metaphor for what we're talking about. And
Mm,
now there's a lot of people talking about even the economy, like bringing back the gold-based currency, whatever. There's so much talk about gold now, right? I mean,
mhm.
I'm sure it has always been, but the context has always been different, right? Like in the
Yeah.
Egyptian times, or even in the Vedic times, from India, gold was used not as a currency, but more as a ritual, as a ceremony, as for prayers and things like that.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, let's leave aside the whole money-based system. I think we already know what's going on with that fake, money-based system, which is, I mean, let's not get into the money, but let's talk about gold. Maybe we can talk about money another time.
Okay.
Uh, and for gold, what do you feel going forward? Let's talk a little bit about the future. I mean, we know what's going on with technology, right? With AI and all this stuff. But what about gold? Where do you think gold fits into this picture in the future?
I don't have particular expertise here, but I'm happy to say a few things blindly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, gold has a very unique vibration. It brings something to Earth which is otherwise absent. Speaking of how everything is here because of its vibration. Um, yeah, gold is very unique. It's a great reminder of some of our cosmic origins, of the solar energy. And I love it for that so much. Um, Obviously, it's heavily manipulated as a reserve currency, and there's a lot of conversation about that. But yeah, we're not going into the money aspect.
Yeah.
Um, just listening to see if I have anything
Yeah. Yeah. Take your time. Yeah.
more substantial to offer.
Yeah.
Well, I use a lot of golden light in my meditation, so I consider it very powerful. It's one of the highest vibrations of light that I know of.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and
Was it?
it brings us into our sovereignty. The association with royalty is not random. It brings us into a more dignified presentation of humanity. So it does have these quite exalted spiritual functions. And I wind up using a lot of gold light. I associate it with angelic frequencies. It bridges a gap also. So, well, this gets into a whole color thing, but I see higher iterations of color as a slightly different, often a more pale version of the original color. Um, so a higher vibration of yellow can sometimes be seen as gold or as a more pale whitish yellow. And this is something that frequently comes up in meditation when I'm going into a higher vibrational space or guiding other people into it. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I think gold, it's not a coincidence that the color of the sun is the same as the color of gold. I'm sure
Mm.
there's deep metaphysical meaning behind that.
Seems true to me.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Salendra. So to wrap it up, anything you want to add? You want to mention your website where people can find you, what you offer to people? Yeah.
Yeah, so I offer coaching sessions to help get closer to the higher self and the most ideal timeline and to clear trauma, particularly trauma-based mind control, obviously. So that's the main offering. My website is antarianjourneys.com. Antarean is the first word. Of Antares, it's a star in the Scorpio constellation. Antarianjourneys.com. Um, Most people know me from appearances like this one here from YouTube. I do have my own YouTube channel, which is simply my name, youtube.com/Alandra Markman, all one word, no at sign, just put my name in, and you can see recordings of some of my meditation groups for free. I host meditation groups twice a week right now. It's different in different seasons, but right now, Thursday evenings and Sunday mornings, and anybody can join those meditations. Those are open and they're by donation. So I try to, keep a very accessible format for people. It's a drop-in group, so it's always different who shows up. Sometimes it's a small group, sometimes it's a big group. So I offer those, and anybody who wants to come to a meditation group can sign up for the email list, which is transitions at lists.riseup.net. They can email me at Alandra, just the name that you see here, Alandra, at riseup, riseup.net. And if you email me, then we can talk a little bit about coaching, or I can put you on my list for meditation groups. Yeah.
All right, great. Yeah, thanks, Alandra. It was great talking to you, and thanks everybody for joining. My name is Lokesh Baba. My website is radicalpurposecoaching.com. This is my podcast called Soul Freedom Show. I also offer one-on-one coaching sessions. I also train people on life purpose, NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and meditations. And if you like this talk, then do subscribe, share this video, and then I would love to, Alandra, I would love to have another conversation with you. If you want open for another one, we can do it in a few weeks.
Yeah,
And
I'm open to that.
yeah, thank you. And then I'm also launching my online course, and I have a platform called Radical Wellness Club. Website is radicalwellnessclub.com, where I'm offering not just my courses, but I'm also inviting other people to add their courses. So if you open for that, Alandra, I'm also offering it to you. Either you can offer your own course, or we can do some kind of a collab, because I see a lot of people I talk to, they have a lot to teach, and they don't have a platform. And that's one. And because I'm also a programmer, I do websites, and so that's why I created this platform. So anyway, we can talk about it offline. But thanks again for joining, Alandra. And yeah, thank you. I hope this video, this discussion is helps people. And any last words you want to say, to like a prayer or something?
May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings know authentic happiness.
Yeah, and may all beings subscribe to my channel.
Yeah.
And to your channel. So, all right. Thanks,
All right.
Alandra. Again,
Million
this is,
subscribers. Here we come.
yeah, 1 million subscribers in one day. All right. Thank you, Alandra. Take care. Have a nice day, bro.
Thank you. Yeah, you too. Bye.